All right, Peter Schrager, Fox NFL Kickoff Sundays, 11 a.m. on Fox. You'll see him week after week. We're lucky enough about once a month he's going to be out here in Los Angeles, and we'll try to put him on the in our chairs. Fox Sports insider, excellent at what he does and breaking stories. And I know we'll get to this in a second. You pick your Super Bowl teams every year, and I don't disagree with the picks. I want to start with Kansas City. I've said this over and over. I think last year was the year to beat them, and nobody could. I watched them last night, and I'm like, yeah, that offense is now good, right? Better.
Shame on 31 NFL teams. Shame on them, because you have a team that last year could not go vertical, had no speed, and they allowed them, with the ability to trade up with one of their competitors, the Buffalo Bills, 28th, to get the fastest player in the NFL draft, maybe the fastest player to enter the NFL in 20 years. And immediately you saw the impact. He was a blur. And last night was just a taste. They're still learning that offense.
Yeah.
Marquise Hollywood Brown is coming. He is one of the other fastest players. Now they have these deep threats that can go. And then you saw Rice over the middle. The NFL had a window last year where the Chiefs were down. They had to win 2 games on the road in the playoffs, and they couldn't put them away. And I think they're going to be better on offense this year.
Yeah, that's my takeaway is nobody plays in the preseason, so you feel like last night I'm like, it's still very experimental. And I'm like, if that's the experiment, and that Ravens defense is good.
Yeah.
That's Kyle Hamilton, maybe the best safety in the sport.
No doubt. And the Chiefs went out there and they started a second-round pick at left tackle, and he held his own against one of the best defensive lines.
Did.
It's a couple years ago, the Chiefs had a draft, and in that same draft class, they got McDuffie, who I think might be the best cornerback in football.
Yeah.
They got Karlaftis, one of the best young rushers. They got Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, and they got Pacheco. Other teams don't draft this way. And if you wonder, like, well, why are the Chiefs so – because they let Willie Gay walk, they let L'Jarius Sneed walk, and they replenish and they fill the cupboard. They're so talented top to bottom, and it's like Kelsey didn't have a big game last night. They didn't need him to.
He had one big catch.
He had one play. Yeah. And that's the Chiefs. They're still going to find a way.
You are higher on the Jets. You have them as a number 1 seed. I've said before, I think Miami and the Jets go down to the final weekend for the playoffs. Wouldn't surprise me if they're in. I'll take Miami, but I don't see either as a Super Bowl team. You do. Why?
Maybe it's the bias that I was at the Jets camp quite a bit. I called one of their preseason games. It is like watching the varsity team play the varsity team in practice every day at those Jets camps. They are so loaded on both sides of the ball. And J-Mac, I know you have a long history with the Jets as well. And you, as a Jets fan, you want to say, don't say any of this in August or September. Let me see it first. They won 7 games last year with unspeakably bad quarterback play. Yeah. Tim Boyle no longer playing. Trevor Siemian no longer in the NFL. Zach Wilson, a third-string quarterback. They also had 20 different offensive linemen suit up for them in big games. You add in Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time, who I'm telling you, from what I see, again, I'm not an Achilles doctor. I couldn't tell you if he goes. He looks amazing. I've been at practice. He is so dialed in. And you add him to guys like Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, and then the defense is outstanding. So to me, on paper, there is no reason this team shouldn't win double-digit games, and there's no reason this team can't run away with the AFC if they're all biting at each other in those other divisions.
Is there a team, Schrags, you're higher on than the overall consensus among others?
I'd go way over on the Seattle Seahawks this year.
That's very interesting. Was it somebody I talked to? Yeah, you're into them. What is it with them?
Pete Carroll's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll is one of the greatest coaches to ever coach in the NFL. He was in his 70s, and the guys had been hearing new blood, 37-year-old head coach, and Mike McDonald, who comes in with a defensive scheme that caused fits around the league. And I can tell you immediately, these defenders who are talking from Seattle saying it is different what we have going on. And then for the offensive coordinator job, they go up to the University of Washington. They hire a college offensive coordinator to come in. Grubb, who last year was the guy who drew up this offense with Penix and Adunze and McMillan and Polk, and Washington was the most fun team to watch. They have all these weapons. No one's talking about, and I'm telling you, the vibes are electric in Seattle right now. And I'm a Geno guy. I know we've been down the road. Like, Geno Smith, this sounds like a backhanded comment. Geno Smith is not going to lose you any games in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think in the Niners vibes, I'm not sure what's going on there. The Rams obviously are going to be in the mix. I would not be shocked if we're talking about Seattle as a division winner in the NFC West.
Yeah, I would say John Snyder almost left a couple of years ago because he wanted more control. He almost took the GM job in Detroit. He stayed. The last 2 drafts, dude, there's like dudes everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, like they got 2 backs, 2 receivers, 2 corners.
And this kid this year, this Byron Murphy, this defensive tackle out of Texas, there were no defensive players drafted in the first 14 picks of the NFL draft. One of the weirdest drafts ever. It was all quarterbacks, offensive linemen. Yeah. Seattle was shocked that he was sitting there when they picked, and they got him, and he's immediately going to make an impact.
You know, I was saying, if you look at the history of not only rookie quarterbacks in week one, but number one picks, David Carr's the last number one.
Is that right?
22 years ago.
Beat the Cowboys. I remember that game.
That is the last number one pick quarterback to win his opener. And I said, Schrags, Tennessee has been watching TV for 6 months and being told this is the new Mahomes.
Yep.
And I'm like, the Titans are this quiet team.
So quiet.
With all these new, smart, young offensive pieces. This is my upset.
This is upset special. I love this, Colin. The Hard Knocks thing is real. You watch Hard Knocks, and even if you just see the clips online, you're like, oh, this is Mahomes. This guy's unbelievable. And the way it's edited and the way they work on it, Caleb comes across as so darn likable on this show that you're like, oh, he's going to lift all boats. But the truth of the matter is, Caleb Williams has not taken an NFL snap in a regular season game. The other quarterbacks in that room are Tyson Bagent and Austin Reed, a second-year guy and another undrafted rookie. There's no veteran voice in his ear. Like, it might not be as smooth as everyone's expecting it to be. Meanwhile, Tennessee, line in the weeds, new coaching staff, bunch of new players, like you're saying. They could come out there. I like that as an upset special. Chicago's really good on paper, and they were really impressive on Hard Knocks and in the preseason. But what a letdown it would be if at home, in his debut, after all this hype, they laid an egg against the Titans.
Tonight's interesting. Games in Europe always are a little wonky. Now we're talking about other side of the planet. And I'm sitting here thinking, you got the Sirianni Heat. Green Bay, I think, will be fine. The young guys travel well. They're going to have a ball. And they're staying like 2 hours from the city. Green Bay is going to be fine. Philadelphia, I said earlier, they're very unique in the NFL. There's a difference between impulsive and decisive. They're the only really well-run team that moves off talented people regularly.
There's a short runway with them.
And that would lead you to believe they're the Colts or they're David Tepper. And it's like, no, that's impulsive. They're usually right. You know, they're like offensive coaches. Chip Kelly was better in college, even though he was winning. Doug Peterson probably wore out his welcome. Carson Wentz, it was time. And you're like, they're not impulsive. They're decisive. I don't know, though, this year. Sirianni, Hurts, the relationship, you're close to this. Is it better than we think or worse? Where do you land on it?
Last year, how they ended the season, it was as catastrophic a situation in the league that you could imagine. This was a team that was 10-1, and it wasn't good enough. They fired their defensive coordinator or removed him or reassigned him at 10-1. Then they went on to lose all those games, and I don't even think anyone remembers. They lost to Baker Mayfield in a playoff game, 32-9. Like it was like, it's like a blur. It's like, the search for offensive coordinator was fascinating this year. Just about everybody interviewed for that job. Kingsbury came through, a lot of different guys. Kellen Moore came through, and they made the case. And, you know, Sirianni is an offensive head coach. And Kellen Moore comes in with this great resume and this ability to be a quarterback whisperer. And, like, Kellen Moore is going to have this huge responsibility. On the defensive side, there's no more, let's try to mix and match with these. Let's go get Vic Fangio, one of the great NFL defensive head coaches and one of the great defensive coordinators of our time. And it's like, these two guys are going to play the biggest role in this thing. And, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to add Saquon and we're going to add all these different young pieces in the defensive backfield, which was their disastrous spot. My biggest question is, if things don't start off hot for Hurts, is Sirianni dealing with every week questions about the hot seat? And if things don't start out hot at the offensive line, is it, oh my gosh, they were all about Jason Kelce and that's it? Tonight, I think the Eagles take care of business. I really do. I think they come in here after a whole offseason of hearing what they can't do. They're going to remind people what they can do. And I also think a huge part of this stadium, I think it's 62,000. I think the Eagles fans all traveled. From what I hear, there are Eagles fans who made this trip. I don't know if the Packers fans are going to show out in this game.
So you make an annual prediction, and I don't know how many years you've been right, and you did it on Good Morning Football, so you're not unveiling it here. You've already done this on the internet. So can I ask, can you tell our audience again what that is?
My annual prediction, the last 3 years I've gotten it right with the matchups right. This year I went out and I said, on a big shocker. The Chiefs are going to win again, and I don't want to call it the three-peat. Pat Riley trademarked that. We can't make money off that. It's the Chiefs, Pete. Okay. And they're going to beat the Green Bay Packers, an ascending team.
Yeah.
That I think LaFleur is going to have to go through his old colleagues, McVay, his old colleague Shanahan, and he's going to have to go win probably in Detroit. I think Detroit's going to maybe be the better regular season team, but I'm in on Green Bay. I think that how they finished the season last year with that win in Dallas, then
that was impressive.
Awesome. And they're just scratching the surface. And the way it is there, I know those guys really well, and they hired Hafley as their defensive coordinator. They draft guys who aren't reading their headlines. They draft guys who are overlooked, and all those guys have this giant chip on their shoulder, including their new running back, who I think might tear it up this season, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah. No, it's I was saying, I'm not sure there's a better team in this sport, and there's many that do it pretty well, that draft and develop. And in a strange way, Schrags, it's an advantage not having an owner because they're never impulsive. Ever.
Absolutely right. And
Never.
They let these guys develop. They let the coaches coach.
Mark Murphy,
of course, you go through all the different, general manager stuff that they've had over the years, whether it was Ted Thompson and then, of course, Goody now. Like, they're willing to face the heat from the fans, too. We look at it now like, oh, of course they moved on from Rodgers. I mean, what a gutsy decision to not let Aaron Rodgers keep them hanging in the balance.
And they did it with Favre.
And they did the same exact thing with Favre. And if you're a Lions fan or a Bears fan or a Vikings fan, you're like, what deal did they sign with the devil that they get to now have this guy for the next 15 years? And like they see it in practice every day. They traded Aaron Rodgers away, the greatest quarterback of his generation, most skilled one, of course. You can say Brady's the best, but this is a guy that, as far as talent goes, and they were like, we're good. We're going to go with the other guy. And it worked out, which is just an amazing gamble. And they don't get enough credit for that.
Peter Schrager, Fox Sports NFL. He'll be on the kickoff Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern on Fox. Now, you'll be out here about once a month?
I think once a month. We're figuring that out from the NFL Network side, but I will be out here every single weekend for Fox NFL Kickoff, which I'm excited for. We're competitive. I think our pregame show is as good as any. You know
when it got really good? When they booted me off.
No, I was going to say, Colin, it started with, I miss you on that desk. We would all be talking about it, and Colin just comes in and is like, you know what? I think in a supermarket, Belichick is kind of like the guy. And I'm like, yeah, Colin, go. I like it. That's it.
They said I had to keep wearing a tie, and I'm like, hire Schrager.
Were you wearing ties, suits and ties? I don't remember.
What's funny about it? For years, I told management, I said, get Schrager on this show. He breaks news. I just break jokes. Let him break news.
You're amazing at what you do, and you were great on that show. You know that.
Peter Schrager, we'd love to have you every time you're in town.
Yeah, absolutely. I love being here. You know that.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.